So years ago, I always like a good story. You know what I'm saying? Like, good stories change people and help your brain and expand your. They just help expand, and hopefully in the right direction. Anyways, beside the point. The point is that years ago, Schwarzenegger was president, and I used to read the paper every morning on my break, and they were executing Stanley Tookie Williams at San Quentin. He was up to be executed, and he started the Crip gang in South Central, and then was convicted of a murder and first degree murder, and then put on death row. And the entire time he maintained his innocence. And while on death row, he started writing children's books, anti-gang, anti-drug children's books, and renounced the gang life and shit. And and then he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the books he wrote. And I don't have any of them, but now that I mention it, I should probably have all his children's books on my shelf in my collection. But so then Schwarzenegger comes up, from what I remember, and then everyone was like, I think Jamie Foxx made a movie about him that they played on FX. But I was following the story pretty close because, like I said, where I'm from, how I grew up, just in that street culture. And me and my boy always used to say we were little Crips and shit. And, we'd listen to the Crip music and we were all about that. That's two little white boys from the country. But, for some reason or another, we identified with that. And so even since I was a kid, that's always been I've always been around that shit or interested in that shit. So then here comes Schwarzenegger. Everyone's like, you can't kill Stanley. And then Schwarzenegger was like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyways. And he shot the appeal down. And so then when they execute Stanley Tookie, there were complications with the lethal injection, if I recall correctly. And number one, they couldn't find a doctor to administer the meds. No, they couldn't find a doctor. It took them hella long to even find a doctor to administer the meds. So God bless everyone who said no, because yeah, fuck that shit. But the one who finally did, there was complications with the injection, and it turned into some inhumane thing, and they missed the artery and they had to do it over again, and it was just turned into this fucking big ass ordeal. And they ended up doing it. They ended up executing Stanley. And then after that, there was the next day or the next week, there was I think his name was Juan Morales, some convicted child molester, killer, rapist, and he was set to be executed the next week. But then after what happened with Stanley on the chair, and the public outcry and how it turns fucking all bad with the complications and shit, Schwarzenegger was all right, fine, put all the other executions on hold. And there's there's Juan Morales, I think his name is. There's Scott Peterson. There's Richard Allen Davis. There's a bunch of pieces of shit, dirtbags on death row. And I don't really think, that's another topic for another day. We don't need to get into that and judgments on who should die and who shouldn't. But you know, those other people were spared because of Stanley, basically, is what happened. And so I've done a lot. I like done Stanley's portrait when I was doing my portraits back in the day, and I was watching interviews with them and shit, and they were like from prison, and like he was a cool dude. I mean, I'm not trying to. He always maintained his innocence from his conviction. Um, I'm not really here to debate that. Um, in the interviews from jail, though, they asked him about his writing and shit, and he talked a little bit about that, and then he said that, and this was just like maybe a few weeks or like a month or like very shortly before he was executed, but he mentioned in the interview that he was working on his memoirs and his like autobiography with his writings, and that he was hoping that his appeal would go through and he wouldn't be executed so that he would be able to finish it. And the title of it was called Thoughts of Thunder. And of course we know that like he went on to get executed and he never got to finish it. But I would really like to read it. And so the bottom line of the story, long story short, is that the name of this channel, Thoughts of Thunder, comes from Tookie, Stanley Tookie Williams. And that's why I named it that. And that's always stuck with me ever since, all the years that's gone by. I always, Thoughts of Thunder, dude. R.I.P. Stanley, dude. Tookie, dude. R.I.P. Nipsey, dude. Fuck all the bullshit, dude. You better fucking get out there and expand your mind and fucking learn about it. Learn about something.